Welcome to this seminar presentation, Functional Isodynamics, Applied Exercise and Nutrition. This program is presented by Natural Health Quest and True Healthy Products. We have formed a professional partnership for the specific purpose of providing our global clientele with the ultimate exercise program and the highest quality nutritional products available. Hello, this is Dr. Gregory, the creator of Functional Isodynamics, Applied Exercise and Nutrition, and the formulator of our soon-to-be-released line of advanced nutritional products. I would like to welcome you to my seminar presentation. Additionally, I would like to thank you personally for taking both the time and having the desire and motivation to learn more about functional isodynamics. I have every confidence that this video will give you more quality information about exercise and nutrition than you will find anywhere else. But before we begin, allow me to cover three general topics very quickly. First, we ask that you please be considerate of our trademark and copyrights. Second, I do not want anyone to think that I'm something special. I'm no superhero. Even though kryptonite has no effect on me, and I'm sure on you, like yourself, I am subject to all of the consequences of life. You know, those aches and pains, sore muscles, and all the dreaded and often painful effects of aging. However, the good news is, functional isodynamics has actually helped many others, including myself, to both achieve and maintain not only notable improvements in our physical well-being, but also in our overall health. And I have every confidence that once you employ the techniques that you are soon to learn about, that you will also receive these desirable benefits. Ah yes, the third item. Unnecessary, but a very typical disclaimer. So please take special note that I'm not advocating any type of diagnosis, treatment, or that this program can cure any disease. I'm simply going to present information that can help each of us to improve the overall quality of our lives. Additionally, I recommend that prior to beginning any nutritional, dietary, or exercise program that you consult your medical professional. And for your comfort, this presentation is divided into four almost equal parts. My overall objective is education. This education, cut. 1, 2, 3, 4. For your comfort, this presentation is divided into four almost equal parts. And my overall objective is education. Education about the greatest advancement in exercise fundamentals and education about life-changing nutritional strategies. I would like all of my listening audience to achieve the maximum benefit from their exercise and nutrition programs. And this presentation is designed to give each person some very unique content. This quality information will enable everyone to enhance their existing fitness programs and nutritional routines. And ultimately, we would love to have you join our team of successful functional isodynamic enthusiasts. Now, the divisions in my presentation should allow for everyone to acquire this very valuable information at their own pace. Now, let's begin by reviewing the topics that I will be covering in the first part of my four-part seminar presentation. Please notice the key symbol to the right of your screen. It will be used to identify each of the individual topics that I will present throughout all 4 parts of my program. Now let's begin with the first one, the end game, if you will. Notice the first key, which identifies the topic, the end game. At this point, I would like to clearly identify my objective and where this presentation will eventually lead you. Obviously, a clear understanding of just what functional isodynamics is would be a great place to start. Please take note. Functional isodynamics is stressful physical exercise which employs dynamic resistance to induce specific muscular contraction, which stimulates the central nervous system, thereby encouraging the body to build the strength of the skeletal muscles, and which, through use and nutritional compliance, increases their anaerobic endurance and physical strength and size. Further, by the time that I conclude this program, you will fully understand the benefits of functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition. So, dealing with these end results, what do you get with this application of functional isodynamics? Well, here are just a few of the benefits. When you couple high-intensity exercise with proper nutrition, such as functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition, you should see improvements in your insulin sensitivity, your heart efficiency, should be able to better deal with diabetes and blood pressure issues, as well as improvements in your anaerobic and aerobic capacity, improvements in the cholesterol ratios, and even optimization of fat metabolism. And of course, what we identified, this intensity of cut. 1, 2, 3. Well, what should you have for the end results when you apply functional isodynamics? Well, here are just a few of the benefits. When you couple quality, proper, high-intensity exercise with quality and proper nutrition, you should see improvements in insulin sensitivity and heart efficiency. You should be able to deal more effectively with type 2 diabetes, blood pressure issues, and improvements in anaerobic and aerobic capacity, as well as improvements in cholesterol ratios and the optimization of fat metabolism. The improvements or intensification of the human growth hormone, or that fitness hormone, should be notable. And of course, the strengthening of the muscles and the bone density, and many more. So the end game. By the end game, you should know what? What should you know by the end of our 4-part program? Well, you should know why. Why your existing program may not be able to give you the results that you desire. Some may be frustrated from enrolling in a variety of different gym-sponsored exercise programs, or maybe even exacerbated by purchasing yet one more TV-advertised ultimate exercise program, just to find yourself one more time with the same level of disappointment. By the end, you should know why your exercise schedule might be wrong for you. You might desire to build additional quality muscle, yet your workout schedule may actually be forcing your body to consume the very muscle you try to construct. This is a catabolic process, and we're going to discuss this in more detail. Also, you know why your nutrition may need some attention. It might very well be that you're simply lacking some very basic but essential nutritional support. And by the end, you should know how you can quickly correct these concerns, and how you can join our functional isodynamics team. So let me ask you, what do you want? Do you want to be an exercise enthusiast, a power lifter, an Olympic lifter, or maybe you just desire to have a higher level of functional health? Regardless of your desire, functional isodynamics has the tools to help you achieve your objectives. We also want to help you measure your success, and we will talk more about this later. At this point, however, please make sure that you are clear in your mind as to what you want. Because once you've decided what you want, whether it's more strength or size or mass or lower body fat, higher level of fitness, with that less chance of injury, troops cut. 1, 2, 3. Because once you've decided what you want, whether it's more strength and size or mass or less body fat or that higher level of fitness with that less chance of injury, then understand that there are many ways for you to achieve your wants. While you can lift rocks or stack boxes or throw bricks or even lift dumbbells. But you need to ask yourself, just how efficient are these various exercise programs? How successful are they? And probably a better line of thought-provoking questions might be, just how efficient and how successful have your previous fitness-oriented programs been? That is what functional isodynamics is all about. Success and efficiency versus the frustration and countless hours at your local fitness center. Now, granted, what you're about to learn is revolutionary relative to the enormous amounts of conflicting rhetoric that exist in fitness centers today. And it will violate most, if not everything, that you have ever read and or heard about regarding exercise theory. It will undoubtedly challenge even some of the nutritional guidance that has surrounded you over the years in your attempt to achieve your desired fitness and or weight goals. But please be patient. This is the new paradigm in the evolution of exercise, nutrition, and weight management. As you review the following program, think deeply about how each new idea that I present, think about it not as an assault on what you have learned or maybe even been doing for years, but rather think of these ideas and concepts as being founded in science and biology and are merely a modification of what you have already learned. Similar to going from grade school to high school or from high school to college. You're just building upon existing knowledge and experience for the sole purpose of your personal improvement. In this case, your personal improvement will be your improved overall health and fitness. So, with all that being stated, let's get started. And to introduce you to these concepts of functional isodynamics, allow me to begin with a simple comparison, an example, if you will, something that I'm sure all of you are aware of. Yes, body armor. Now, let's just say for a moment that you're not familiar with this product or concept. So what if I tell you that this product can reduce your chance of physical injury? Further, this product has the ability to reduce your chance of death. Would that interest you? How about if I tell you that there will be a required investment on your part? First, you must purchase the product. Then, to fully benefit from this product, you must make some changes in your typical habits and or routines, some of which may have been lifetime of habits and routines. And then you're required to make some adaptations and or modifications in your lifestyle. However, if you invest in and apply this product, you can immediately enjoy the benefits of a reduced exposure to physical injury and even death. Now, would you be interested? More importantly, would you invest in something that has immediate and tremendous benefits to you? Now, for some, this is going to be difficult, as they say, to wrap their head around, because making a change in your lifestyle and adapting to and applying a new concept like functional isodynamics can present a challenge to many people. But, just like body armor, functional isodynamics can reduce your risk of physical injury and even death. And by the close of this seminar presentation, you will fully understand these valuable and vital concepts. Now, as we move through this presentation, you may have questions. Hopefully, I will have presented sufficient material throughout the program to address your individual concerns. And upon completion of past webinars and seminars, all attendees have had the majority of their technical questions addressed throughout the course of the program. And upon completion of the presentation, most attendees simply move forward to get immediately involved with the functional isodynamic program. And of course, our hope will be the same for you. However, there will be contact information available at the end of this presentation, just in case there are some exceptions. Now, please remember, what I'm about to discuss is no less than a massive paradigm shift in thinking. Thinking about exercise primarily and nutrition secondarily. I will provide some information about nutrition that will be of great benefit to you. But the primary purpose of this presentation is about your exercise. Sets, your reps, and how often you go to the fitness center, for example. Everything I'm about to discuss will directly challenge over 100 years of traditional exercise and nutritional dogma. I am about to challenge most, and for some listening, I will challenge everything that you have ever heard or been taught in your fitness centers, gyms, and clubs. But just bear in mind, consider us adding to your base of knowledge. And if you are ready, finally ready to get noticeable and measurable results from your exercise and nutrition program, then I'm here to help you. Now let's begin with a real-life question. Who's changed at your gym? This is really a simple question, but by asking you who's changed at your gym over, let's say, the past year, or maybe just in the past 90 days, will require some serious thought on your part. So take a moment to reflect on this. Run that video in your mind and think about the people that you've interacted with maybe over the last year. And then let's look into this question just a little deeper. Let's look at some real gym statistics. As you look at all those people in your gym sweating at those spinning classes and Pilates, or heaven forbid running ad nauseum, and even running backwards on ellipticals and doing some other form of exhaustive, age-increasing exercise. Also have a look in your mind's eye of the men and the women training with weights. Almost always these weights are too heavy. That's why they're banging them on the floor. And they almost always spend way too long exercising. Now, think about those people and tell me, have their bodies changed at all in the past year? Or have they changed in the past 90 days? When I talk to people in the fitness centers and ask them this question, they generally respond to me in this manner. No, they haven't seen the change. And if you responded likewise, you would be in harmony with most everybody I talk to. Sadly, the real gym statistics reveal that only 1/2 of 1% of all gym goers and exercisers make any significant body transformation over a 1 year period of time, let alone in just 90 days. Now, because of this, a lot of people will hire personal trainers to help them. Now, I've received many stories about personal training over the years, and I'm not bad-mouthing personal trainers, but this may be a story that you might be familiar with. This particular client hired a personal trainer for 3 months at over $1,000, 36 training sessions with nutritional counseling. And when she would interact with her trainer to say, I'm not getting results, or I don't feel results, or I don't see anything changing, etc., the response from the trainer was, well, you've got to work out harder. Maybe you've heard that. Or maybe you've heard what she also heard. You got to come in more often, add another day to your program. Or you've got to increase the amount of aerobic exercise. Could you imagine doing this to your already very demanding exercise program, which you're paying for? Make no mistake, you have just purchased the world's best personal trainer, Functional Isodynamics. And I'll prove it to you. Because with Functional Isodynamics, if you're going to use the applied exercise techniques and the applied nutritional strategies, you can achieve notable changes in your overall physical appearance and health in 90 days. And here's my confidence. This is our position. Now, are you committed to finally achieving real results from all of your trips to the fitness center? Well, here's your first challenge. You got to decide if you're willing to stay with the crowd of frustrated exercise enthusiasts, or if you're ready to move to the head of the class with Functional Isodynamics. Because if you are, Functional Isodynamics is the key to your success. And again, there will be questions coming up during our presentation, but please be patient. My desire is to answer all of your questions by the conclusion of our 4-part presentation. Now, let's look into the programs. There are many programs within the Functional Isodynamics. Allow me to set the stage regarding this. Here we see a few of the different types of programs. They're self-regulated exercise programs, or you can have them monitored by me one-on-one for your own personal improvement. Now today, however, my presentation will focus on the basic concepts that are the foundation to every program. The underlying principles to Functional Isodynamics is outcome-based. It's science and biology, and that's what makes Functional Isodynamics, applied exercise and nutrition, work so powerfully, and why it will work for you. But let me ask you a very direct question. What motivates you? What motivates you to exercise? Or what motivates you to keep going to the fitness center and or jumping on the treadmill? Like I asked you before, is it to lose weight? Maybe you want to build muscle, or maybe you just want to look your best. Regardless, the following chart will help you gain a better perspective about the various types of exercises and their anticipated outcomes. This chart visually defines the relationships between the most recognized type of exercise and the typical, or rather anticipated, fat reduction or muscle development relative to that exercise technique. Now, obviously, this is all related to the amount of time that you involve in each exercise, your age, your physical fitness at any given point, your health, your own personal limitations. So there's a lot of variables that aren't included here. But if we're just looking at this in concept, Take, for example, the area of yoga at the top of the chart. Now, if you look at yoga compared to everything below it, there's more time required in that program. There's less intensity and therefore less muscle development than all of those below. So if you were to look, for example, at cross training or circuit training or CrossFit, you would see that they have less time involvement in yoga. They are more intense in their exercise programs than yoga, but they take less time than yoga. And that gets you to the foundation of that pyramid. Functional isodynamics applied exercise and nutrition literally gives you the best of all of this. It gives you the greatest intensity, the least amount of time involved, or the greatest amount of muscle development. And you'll also notice some other benefits, one of which is you'll be less subject to injury. So, this chart visually defined the benefits of using functional isodynamics. Now, before we explore a deeper understanding of this new paradigm of exercise, allow me to give you a brief history as to why and how this revolutionary concept was developed. Ah, yes, a little history. Or why I developed functional isodynamics. Like many of you that are listening, I desired, well, to have a higher quality of health, measurable strength and mass, maintainable results, but I wanted to do it all naturally. So once I defined my objectives, I started down the road to find the answer to all those related questions, you know, the why, when, where, and how. Now, I can assure you that over the course of time, from the time I started down this road to where I am right now, some of those objectives clearly changed. As I learned more, those objectives changed. So, I developed what I have today as a consequence to life's experiences in spite of life's challenges. I don't want anyone to think that I woke up one day with an epiphany. This has been, to say the least, a rather lengthy developmental process, because I started in the late 50s. And like many of us at that time, I had my heroes. For me, it was men like Steve Reeves and John Grimmick and others. And my first trip to the gym was to a place called Vic Tanny's. Now, it stands in stark contrast to what we recognize today as fitness centers. However, it was the Cadillac in its time. And like all history lessons, they have their starting point, and this was mine. At that time, the leading pioneer in the fitness arena was Bob Hoffman, and I consumed many of his products in the 50s and 60s. And for those that don't know who Bob Hoffman is, just take note that almost everything we have today in the fitness environment sprang from his efforts to promote weightlifting. The isometric rack pictured here, for example, is the forerunner of our modern-day power racks and Smith machines. Now, by the 70s, the famous Universal Gym had appeared. And try as I may to look like my heroes, I was falling short of meeting my objectives, even though I was doing the Monday, Wednesday, Friday workout. And in some cases, I found myself doing the Monday through Friday workouts. After all, the thinking at that time was more is better. And at that time, I did have my youth. But sadly, I just didn't have the results. Something was still missing. So by the time the 70s rolled in, I was transitioning to Olympic lifting. Men like Tommy Kono and Norm Szymanski were dominating the strength field with powerful feats of strength, and I wanted that. Objectives changed a little bit. So I started to Olympic lift. And after years of such endeavors and making noticeable gains and improvements, I once again was coming up short. I found that something was still missing. Now, granted, I had discovered a world of benefit from the Olympic lifts, but by the 80s, my attention was drawn to the sheer power demonstrated in the sport of powerlifting. Now, with powerlifting, I noticed some some notable changes or differences between that and my short stint in bodybuilding, which I had accomplished somewhere in that same window of time. You know, with the bodybuilding, you get that typical pump, and after you leave the gym, you notice that it fades away as you cool off. But with powerlifting, I found that my development in both size and strength were improving. And by contrast to that bodybuilding, what I found was with powerlifting, I remained literally the same size all the time. Further, I was able to maintain my strength. Now, as a benefit, it was during this time that I was also privileged to meet and even work out with such powerhouses as Bill Kazmaier. Now, a brief workout with Bill Kazmaier will quickly demonstrate why he has the title of the world's strongest man. Now, many of you might even recognize this next individual without any explanation from me. So, it was during this same time frame that I started to see not only the downside of these various avenues in weightlifting, but also the benefits. So I began to concentrate my efforts on the best of all. I started to develop different programs and to implement and share these, such as I've identified on the screen. But I was taking note of the benefits, the results, if you will, and also any undesirable elements. It was in this same time frame that I had learned that the Russians were doing their power lifts once a week. Now, this was earth-shattering at that time. The circulating gym theory was clearly more is better. Most of the guys that I worked out with and knew in the fitness centers were going in there 5 days a week with 2 days off, or at the very least the traditional Monday, Wednesday, Friday routines, and they were spending 2 to 4 hours with each workout. In the mix of all of this, I was implementing these various programs that I developed with the entire purpose of determining what really worked. It was at this time that I switched from following the standard gym rhetoric, you know, reading the last issue in the magazine and such, and started training the brain. I began to base my programs on results, what was actually working. Essentially, I'd set the foundation for outcome-based exercise techniques that I have today. And I literally discarded everything else. Now, here's an example of one such developmental approach. This was what I call my 10-day cycle. So you can see with week 1 on Monday, I did a heavy squat routine, but I wouldn't do the heavy squat routine again for 10 days. I would do a light bench routine, a heavy deadlift routine, a heavy bench, a light deadlift, and then a heavy squat. And it would rotate through there with a 10-day cycle. So I was transitioning, if you will, at this time from the traditional Monday, Wednesday, Friday routine. But I was still not breaking away from it completely. Again, that 1980s theory was that you would begin to lose strength if you weren't in the gym every 72 hours. Powerful myths at that time. Regardless, this new approach was actually setting the foundation for functional isodynamics. And in this time period, I was beginning to learn and understand a little bit more about resting and recuperation. Words that really did not have much use in the fitness centers at that time, and very sadly, they're not mentioned very often even today. Regardless, this 10-day cycle allowed me to make notable improvements. Now, bear in mind that this was a very radical approach in 1980s workout thinking. And of course, it transitioned into a weightlifting or a powerlifting contest program or schedule. So here's my powerlifting contest schedule that followed that 10-day cycle, where you can see a Monday, Wednesday, Friday lift, and then I would take off 8 days and come in on a Saturday and do a pre-lift. Now, the reason I did it on Saturdays is at that time the contests were always conducted on Saturdays. So 8 days off, I do a pre-lift where I did my 3 benches, my 3 deadlifts, and my 3 squats. And then I would take 7 days off and go to the contest. And I began to realize that I was not living in the gym and I was not working out every 72 hours. And I realized that I had not lost strength. So how did I know that I had not lost that strength? Very simply, because of my lift totals. The proof, as they say, is in the pudding, or as I stated before, it's outcome-based or evidence-based. Some of my contest totals were often exceeding my maximum lift experienced in previous workout sessions. So let's go to this example here. Think about this. Let's say you make an initial lift today. You lift a certain amount of weight, a certain number of reps. You go to the gym at your next workout day, and you find yourself lifting the same weight and the same number of repetitions. What does that tell you about your program and your progression? Well, let's go to example B. Let's say you lift a specific amount of weight and lift it a certain number of times today, and you go to the gym at your next date and you find out that you're either lifting more weight or you're lifting the same weight more times. What does that tell you about your exercise program and your progression? And let's go to the C example. You lift a specific weight, a specific number of times today, you go to the gym in the future, and you lift either less weight or the same weight less times. What does that tell you about your program and your progression? So before we explore these questions in more detail, and we will, because it's important to understand the answers to this as to why your program may be not giving you the results you want and why functional isodynamics can. But here's a question that some have asked me at this point in previous seminars, and I wanted to share it with you. And it's very simply that I was asked that these programs, these concepts that I was implementing in the 80s and such, were they actually working? Were there results? And it was a legitimate question, given that I was and still am taking such a radical departure from the mainstream programs that have been pumped out month after month and year after year in countless musclehead magazines, and touted, of course, as gospel throughout most of the gyms in the world. So, did these programs I developed, did they work? Well, here was a 1986 power meet, and at that time, I was lifting in the 198-pound class, and that's a 610-pound squat. So I felt pretty good about that. And then throughout the 80s and 90s, the programs worked for me in bodybuilding and general fitness, but they also allowed me to make great strides, and when I shared them, it also allowed the people that I was working with, again, evidence-based outcome for all, it allowed them to have the results that they wanted. The continued development of these program concepts allowed me to interact with many people, and by the turn of the century, I was beginning to fine-tune the various programs so that by the early to mid-2000s, I was focusing more intently on the nutritional development that would harmonize with the physical or exercise portion of my programs. So, in retrospect, a little recap. I had the starting point in the 50s. Now, exercise and nutrition was actually fundamental to each decade, with focus on the strength in the 70s, the size of power and powerlifting in the 80s. By the 90s, a shift in clinical research as I continued to apply these programs, and the application and testing since 2000, so that by 2008 I had it all together. Now the benefit here is you're going to get over 50 years of this research, hands-on application, and outcome-based results in just a few hours. Now with that being said, and the history's behind us, let me ask you this question. Why exercise? More importantly, why do you exercise, or why do you desire to exercise? Well, the main objective to weightlifting exercise is to exceed the existing capability of our muscles. Whatever their strength is today, you want that to improve. And therefore, you want to stimulate it to grow. Now, the critical point is balancing the intensity of the exercise with the duration of the exercise. Now, I cannot overstate the importance of this statement. When you understand how to balance the intensity of your exercise program with the duration of your exercise program, you will see marked increases in your strength, improvements in your physical health, and your overall well-being. And I'm going to come back to this intensity and duration throughout the seminar because it's critical that you understand that. So why exercise? Well, of course, the health benefits of exercising, normalizing our, in this case, I have identified glucose, insulin, ghrelin, and leptin levels and their receptor sensitivity because these are ones that are typically out of balance when we don't exercise, and also they're compromised because of modern nutrition. And of course, one of the most important factors is our overall health. And as we noted earlier, exercise helps us improve that fitness hormone, that human growth hormone. Now, when they're not balanced, we see that we are out of balance. Now, maybe we're not out of balance as egregiously as this image is, but when our hormones are out of balance, we're out of balance, plain and simple. And the exercise and nutrition allows us to put our body back into that proper balance. Now, why exercise? Well, Dr. Church tells us that exercise strengthens the entire human machine, and I'm sure everyone can agree with that. So going back to the question, why exercise and nutrition? Well, here's a little graph I ran across that I think helps us understand the benefits of exercise and nutrition, correct exercise and nutrition. And if you look to the left, you'll see the leading causes of death in the United States, and to the right of the screen, you'll see the actual cause of death. In other words, what is the contributing issue there? What is the underlying factor? And if you notice, when you take smoking out of the program, poor diet and physical inactivity are really the predominant issues. And you can readily see the need for having an outcome-based quality exercise and nutritional program such as functional isodynamics, applied exercise, and nutrition. So why exercise? Again, it's the correct application of resistance training, both in intensity, or the force that you're applying, and the duration, the amount of time is involved for the program, because it can achieve a number of beneficial changes in the structure, the molecular, the enzymatic, the hormonal, which you've already identified, and the chemical levels in your body, as well as preventing the undesirable muscle loss as you age. And we're going to go into this a little bit deeper in the program because it's important that you understand that if you can control that muscle loss, you'll have a severe impact on the quality of your future health and life. And of course, improper training and nutritional techniques can actually impede your progress and compound your program. It can compound your problems. And we're going to go into this in detail here shortly. So what problems do you think we're talking about? Well, sadly, the problems that most of us encounter is based on this lack of science and biology. Most of the fitness center information is in this last century is really based on myths, bad information, not founded in science. And these problems that I identified, I refer back to what I call musclehead gurus, because they generate things like this. They generate exercise myths and programs that are not founded in science or biology. And as a consequence, people are overtrained, they're undernourished, they're not recovering, and they're subject to exercise injuries. And we're going to look at these two areas, the exercise myths and programs, and then we're going to see how it relates to these other components in the next few minutes. So let's identify first this science fiction, these myths and programs that these musclehead magazines and gurus pump out ad nauseum. One, for example, is this, and I think the overhead there is very self-explanatory, because too many women are afraid of using weights because they think they're going to get huge, and that will never be the case, and we'll explore that in more detail. But other myths, well, how about this one? Use it or lose it. Now, sadly, all of us could benefit from exercise, and this country is as a whole in sad shape because there's not enough exercise. But at the other extreme, people use this concept of use it or lose it as a reason to do more. And we'll go into these programs here in a minute to see how much more is. Of course, another point is no pain, no gain. Now, that's really not the way you want to approach your fitness program, because you can get substantial gains with intensity, with effort, but not necessarily do you have to be in pain to achieve it. Ah, yes, you've got to confuse the muscles. And as you will learn throughout this seminars, muscles don't think, and they are not confused. I don't care how you carry the dumbbell in your hands, moving it around, looking backwards over your shoulder in the mirror, you will not confuse the muscle. If you don't work out, you'll lose strength. Well, this harmonizes with the rhetoric that I was listening to in the 80s when they said, if you're not in the gym in 72 hours, you will lose strength. And of course, that's not true. And you've got to tear down the muscle. I've heard many people say, oh, I got to go to the gym. I got to tear down that muscle. I'll assure you people, if you tear that muscle, you won't go to the gym. And for anybody that's ever torn a rotator cuff or maybe a hamstring, you don't need a letter from anybody to tell you that you're in pain. So make no mistake about it, you do not tear down muscle. At the very best, you might consume the substrate that's converting it ATP in there so the body can move the weights and exercise, but you're not tearing down the muscle. Pain is fuel. Oh, there you go. Actually, for those that aren't aware of it, pain is a flag on the field. It's a cease and desist order. You know, like stop doing it. If your exercise is painful, you're doing it incorrectly, or you're hurt and need to stop. And of course, there's more to these, and we'll explore some now and throughout the program. But here's one that really kind of sets you on end. It's weight loss secrets. There's no diet, there's no nutritional change, and there's no exercise. And somehow you're going to lose weight without making any changes. And of course, this is absurd at best, because again, if all of this guru information, all of this mass disinformation that's peddled through musclehead magazines, if it actually worked, if every man had the physical fitness features that he wanted and the women had the figure that they wanted, well, the world would be at peace. And last I checked, it's not. The problem is, real science on exercise and nutrition has literally been in a box for the last 100 years. And what you want to do, and what we will do, is we're going to evaluate some of these faulty exercise programs, and then we're going to compare it to functional isodynamics. Now, at this point, we want to ask you, what is your mythical or what is your exercise program? In other words, what program are you currently employing in your regular routine of going to the fitness centers or gyms? Is it this one, maybe to the left, where you upper body on one day, lower body the next, and you rotate off where you're, or do you do the 2 on and 2 off routine? Is that your program? Or maybe it's this, where you go to the gym and you have to use 8 different chest exercises to make sure you get those pectorals from every angle. Or here's no ordinary workout. Now, if you notice the number of reps and the sets, you're going to do 6 sets, 20 reps, 6 sets, 20 reps, 6 sets, 20 reps, 420, 420. Whew, you get a workout just talking about it. Maybe that's your program. Or how about this one, where you go twice a day, 6 days a week, chest and back on one day, then you do thighs, calves, and abs, and so on and so forth. And if you look at that, the abs get worked out every day. How about that workout? Maybe that's yours. Or how about you're involved with creating big shoulders, so you're going to use this particular program. And again, the sets and the reps can get pretty enduring. Well, how about this one? By the time you do the warm-up, the endurance, the cool-down, and the stretching, you're in the gym for an hour and a half. Now, that's 3 to 5 days a week. Well, how about this one on the right? 127 weight loss tips and tricks. Now, I have no idea how long your stay at the fitness center would be to implement 127 tips and tricks. But let's look at this. Here's your myth. 7 squat variations you need to try. Now, the only reason I say it's a myth is because a variation in a squat routine may help you acquire better balance. But it's not going to change the physical performance of the muscle, because the muscle is still doing the same thing regardless of the variation. But not to be left out, let's let the men get weighed in on this one, and there's 7 must-try squat variations. Now, so that we understand, the same magazine at another time comes up with 20 rep squat routine. So apparently the 7 wasn't sufficient. Now we got to do this one. And of course, notice the words, if you can walk after leg day, you're doing it wrong. Now that's a myth in the making, because you should be able to walk. Okay, here you go. The barbarism is alive and well. Punish your pecs from every angle. And notice the one on the bottom, this is a real insult to your intelligence, if you picked up on that already. The best abdominal exercises. You've never heard of them. How you like that insult? You've never heard of these. There's 77 unique ab-blasting exercises, but you've never heard of them. So apparently you've never heard of a setup or a trunk rotation or anything like that. Imagine that. So here's the real killer squat till you puke barbaric myth. It's a heart attack in the waiting, and I've worked out in the gyms over the years, as I've already identified, and in that time I have run into many a guy that will do their workout routine, run to the bathroom, come out wiping their hand across their mouth, and go right back to doing the next set, and never thinking for a moment that maybe the body was telling them something. And of course, maybe everyone that's been to the gym for any length of time has seen this one. This is the mirror routine, where you will hold some kind of a dumbbell in your hand, for example, and you'll sit there intently in front of the mirror and stare at your wrist as you rotate this dumbbell real slowly backwards and forward and concentrating. Or you'll hold a bar behind you and look over your shoulder and contract a muscle and look and stiff, and well, it looks good for the cameras, I'm sure, but it's totally worthless as far as function and performance. And hoping to get any improvement, well, you throw that out in the bathwater. So let's move on here. Muscle magazines put out information like this. 15 pounds of muscle. You can pack on 15 pounds of muscle. Now, this is nothing new, because here's the magazines from the 60s talking about a pound of muscle a day. Gain a pound a day of solid muscles. I'll assure you, there is no way, male or female, you can put on a pound a day of muscle unless you do it synthetically, in which case most of that will be fluid. So Don't go there. There are ways to put on muscle, a little less than a pound a day, but it's real muscle, and you'll be able to keep it. So anyway, these many myths, and many of them are in the world today. They're floating around every area of athletics. I went through the magazine rack prior to this program, and I stopped counting at 24 magazines of his fitness, or her fitness, and their fitness, and my fitness, and run this fitness, and jump that fitness. And each one of them had the latest something. Each one had the latest arm blaster or the latest shoulder blaster routine. And sadly, folks, when you go back to the fitness centers or you go back to the magazine counter next month, you're going to pick up the same magazine with a different series of articles touting the latest arm blaster and the latest shoulder blaster. And no one ever asks why. Why didn't the one last month work? So the end results from all of these myths and these exercise programs. Where are we going with this? Well, here's the end results if you buy into these myths and these exercise programs. Now, you might think that I'm adding a lot of unnecessary drama to the program, but as you will soon realize, this is all too real and sadly all too often ignored. There is a very obvious but hidden danger to all of these myths, these mythical programs and exercise programs that these musclehead magazines and gurus pump out. There's a real danger. And the danger is in many fashions. It comes in overtraining, undernourishment, you're not recovering, you're subject to injuries, and believe heart attacks. Could you believe that? Recall my earlier comparison between body armor and functional isodynamics. The key is to reduce your risk of personal injury. And with faulty exercise programs, you can actually increase your potential for injury and a host of cardiac issues. Functional isodynamics, applied exercise and nutrition, offers a simple approach that can help reduce your exposure to such life-threatening danger. Now, what do I mean when I say danger? Well, let's get an understanding of this new paradigm that I'm talking about. And to do that, we need to know the connection between this concept of being overtrained and what undernourishment means and how not recovering subjects you to injuries. We want to balance that with exercise. And as I mentioned before, it's exercise intensity and the exercise duration, and also the supporting nutrition. And another critical component we want to introduce is this concept of recuperation. We want to balance all this together to get a really full understanding of this new paradigm of functional isodynamics and how it really stands in stark contrast to all that mythical guru Musclehead magazine exercise programs that everyone's been inundated with. Let's start with this. Let me get your attention to how serious these programs can be if they're implemented. This heart on the right is, as it says, the enlarged heart with heart failure. Obviously something none of us want to involve ourselves with. But let's look at some information. Let's look at some research. How does this overtraining affect our heart? Now, there's several recent studies, scientific studies, that indicate endurance exercise, such as marathon and triathlon training, now notice, and even extended workouts, pose some significant risk to your heart, some which may be irreversible and life-threatening. Now, the extended workouts I put in there to clarify this concept of going to the gym 3, 4, 5, 6 or more days a week, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours at a time. Because when you're in the gym that many days for that many hours, you're actually training just like you would for a marathon or a triathlon. The training is exactly, the duration of the training is exactly the same. But notice that when you do that, it poses significant risk to your heart, some of which may be irreversible and life-threatening. So let's go a step further. What does this overtraining, excessive training mean to you personally? Well, excessive exercise can lead to acute heart volume overload, inflammation, thickening and stiffening of the heart muscle and arteries, coronary artery calcification, arrhythmias, and sudden cardiac arrest. Now, again, I don't want you to think I'm making this up. This is the Mayo Clinic telling you this. Okay. So let's go a little bit further in the dangers of these mythical programs and how this can lead to overtraining or excessive training. The emerging data suggests that chronic training for and competing in extreme endurance events, and again, going to the gym 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week, twice a day, 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, can cause transient acute volume overload of the atria and right ventricle with transient reductions in the right ventricular ejection fraction and elevation of cardiac biomarkers. Again, this is the Mayo Clinic. Going further on this overtraining or excessive training, and I'll let you read this one by yourself, over the months and years of repetitive injury. So again, it's not something that happens one time. It's over a period of time that you're continuing to do this. But notice also this, additionally, these long-term, excessive, sustained exercise may be associated with coronary artery calcification, diastolic dysfunction, and large artery wall stiffening. Again, the Mayo Clinic. Now, are they the only ones that are involved with this type of science research? And no, they're not. When you get into overtraining or excessive training, this study comes out of Canada. Now notice it says that regular exercises reduces cardiovascular risk by a factor of 2 or 3. And it's really important that we note that most people in this country do not exercise, period. So that a program of regular, and we should qualify that with proper exercise, will reduce cardiovascular risk by a factor of 2 or 3. But notice what the study goes on to say. The extended, vigorous exercises performed during a marathon, again, multiple times in the gym, multiple hours at a time, multiple days a week, raises your cardiac risk 7-fold. Printed, documented, researched, peer-reviewed, etc., etc. Now, if you're not sure where you exist in this issue, here's a picture of the cardiac heart disease issues in this country. Obviously, it's real. Now, let's go back to this. Remember the heart, the enlarged heart? As you're sitting watching this video, your heart's pumping 4, maybe 5 liters a minute. But it has to do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now, when you go to the gym, fitness center, health club, and you start working out, that heart volume moves up to maybe 20 liters a minute. Tremendous change in the volume of blood. And it is moving for the period of time that you're exercising for those hours and for those days. Now let's break this down a little differently. Visualize that heart is like a hydraulic jack that has to create a lot of pressure. And that left ventricle will gorge itself with oxygenated blood. It'll fill up. And then that muscle squeezes all that blood out through the aorta. Now what a lot of people don't realize is that pressure that's created in that left ventricle, it doesn't have to create just enough pressure to push the blood out. It's got to create enough pressure to push all that blood out and then through the body and into the other side of the heart. Now that's a tremendous amount of pressure, and it has to go on throughout your daily routine, and it goes on through all of those exercises, those marathon type exercises. And by doing that for at lengths of time, days, months, years, you actually create problems primarily in that left ventricle, where it changes the wall quality and the muscle makeup and subjects you to that heart issue. So, no pain, no gain. Rethink those myths. Pain is weakness leaving the body. No, it's not. Pain is telling you that you have a problem. And this is not the problem you want. So, throughout the next 3 parts of our program, we're going to explore the real workings of functional isodynamics. And we're going to see very clearly why functional isodynamics will give you the results you want and will reduce your risk of injury and will certainly reduce your exposure to these cardiac issues. The end of our first program. So I appreciate your attention to this information, and we'll take a break and begin our second part where we'll go into more detail about some of these myths and how they interact with you and how functional isodynamics can actually help you overcome all of these staggering issues. And again, I want to thank you for your desire to improve the quality of your future.